Daniel Corrigan had memorized her routine before he ever learned her name. 7:15 every weekday morning, the glass door of Mabel's Corner Cafe would swing open, and he would step into the smell of burnt sugar and fresh grounds, and she would already be there behind the counter, dark hair pulled back, pen tucked behind her ear, pouring coffee for the construction crew in the corner booth. She never looked up right away. That was the first thing he noticed. Most servers scanned the door when it opened, sizing up tips and timing, but she kept her eyes on the work, on the steady pour, the clean wipe of the counter, the way she set the creamer down without a sound. It was only after she finished whatever small task held her attention that she would glance toward the entrance, and by then Daniel would already be sliding into his usual spot by the window, briefcase at his feet, jacket draped over the back of the chair. Her name tag said Claire. He never asked for his order. She brought it anyway. Black coffee, no sugar, and the sourdough toast with butter on the side, never spread. The first time she got it right without asking, he looked up, startled, and she just shrugged, the corner of her mouth lifting in something too small to be called a smile. "You're predictable," she said, and walked away before he could respond. It should have annoyed him. Daniel Corrigan prided himself on being anything but predictable. At 34, he was the youngest senior analyst at Harmon & Breck, a downtown firm where people twice his age still stumbled through presentations he could deliver in his sleep. He wore charcoal suits and Italian shoes and kept his calendar color-coded. Predictable was the last thing he wanted to be. But when Claire said it, standing there with the coffee pot still in her hand, it didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like she had been paying attention. The months folded into a rhythm. 7:15, the door, the coffee, the toast. They didn't talk much. Claire wasn't the chatty type, and Daniel had never been good at small talk. But there were moments. Little cracks in the routine. The morning she noticed the bandage on his hand and set down the coffee with a quiet, "Careful." The day he left a $5 tip on a $3 check and she raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. The Tuesday it rained so hard the gutters overflowed and she brought him a second cup without charging, saying only, "You look like you need it," and she was right. His father had called the night before, the same conversation they always had, the one where disappointment hung in every pause. Daniel didn't tell her that. He just said, "Thanks," and she nodded, already turning away. He started arriving earlier. 7:10, then 7. He told himself it was about beating the morning rush, getting a head start on emails, but the truth sat in his chest every time the door chimed, and Claire looked up from wiping down the espresso machine. The truth was that this 20-minute window, this sliver of the day before meetings and spreadsheets and conference calls, had become the part he looked forward to most. It was ridiculous. She was a waitress. He was a senior analyst. Their worlds didn't overlap. They barely spoke. And yet, when she refilled his coffee and her wrist brushed the edge of his saucer, he felt it for hours. Then, on a Thursday in late September, she wasn't there. The replacement was younger, blonde, too eager. She smiled with all her teeth and called him Han and got his order wrong. No butter on the side? Sugar in the coffee? Daniel didn't correct her. He just drank it, bitter and wrong, and stared out the window at the gray sky. He came back Friday. Still no Claire. The blonde whose name tag said Kimmy greeted him like an old friend and messed up the toast again. He left early. Monday, he told himself he wouldn't go. He had a breakfast meeting uptown anyway, some investor pitch that would run long. But at 7:12, he pushed open the door to Mabel's, and Claire still wasn't there. "She quit," Kimmy said. "Too bright, too loud. Just walked in last Wednesday and told Mabel she was done. Didn't even give 2 weeks. Crazy, right?" Daniel set his briefcase down slowly. "Did she say why?" Kimmy shrugged, already moving to the next table. "Nope. Just said she had something she needed to do." He didn't go back to Mabel's after that. 3 weeks later, Daniel sat in the glass-walled conference room on the 9th floor, half listening to Jenkins from HR drone on about the new hire onboarding process. His mind was elsewhere. It had been elsewhere for days. The coffee at the office was terrible, bitter and burnt, and he kept catching himself looking at the clock at 7:15 as if muscle memory could summon her back. He didn't even know her last name. He didn't have her number. She was gone, and he had no way to find her, and the smallness of that fact hollowed him out in a way he didn't want to examine. Jenkins was still talking when the door opened. Daniel glanced up, ready to be annoyed at the interruption, and then everything stopped. Claire stood in the doorway. She wore a gray blazer he'd never seen before, her hair down instead of pulled back, a portfolio tucked under one arm. She looked different, sharper, but her eyes were the same, dark and steady, and when they met his across the table, something shifted in her expression. Surprise. Then something else, something he couldn't name. Jenkins stopped mid-sentence. "Can I help you?" Claire blinked, tearing her gaze away from Daniel. "I'm sorry. I'm here for the junior analyst interview. I was told to come to the 9th floor." "You're early," Jenkins said, checking his watch. "We're not starting interviews until 11. "I can wait," Claire said. Her voice was calm, but Daniel saw her grip tighten on the portfolio. Jenkins sighed, the put-upon sigh of a man who had too many tasks and not enough hours. "Fine. Wait in the hall. Someone will come get you. She nodded and turned to leave, but not before her eyes flicked back to Daniel just for a second. Then the door closed, and she was gone. And Jenkins was talking again, something about retention metrics, but Daniel heard none of it. His pulse hammered in his ears. The meeting ended at 10:40. Daniel barely remembered standing, gathering his papers, walking out. He found her sitting in one of the chairs near the elevator, knees together, hands folded over the portfolio in her lap. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Hi," Daniel said finally. "Hi," Claire said. He shoved his hands into his pockets. "You quit." "I did." "Why?" She looked down at her portfolio, fingers tracing the edge. "I got tired of pouring coffee for people who didn't see me." The words landed like a punch. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. She was right. He had seen her, but had he really? Or had he just seen the routine, the comfort, the 20 minutes of his day that felt less suffocating than the rest? "I saw you," he said quietly. Claire's gaze lifted. "Did you?" "I memorized your schedule," he said, and it sounded absurd out loud, but it was true. "I knew you worked doubles on Thursdays. I knew you hated the espresso machine because it burned your hand once and you never trusted it again. I knew you read Murakami on your breaks because I saw the book in your bag." Her expression softened, just barely. Norwegian wood. "Yeah." She let out a breath. "I didn't think you noticed things like that." "I notice everything about you," Daniel said, and the admission hung between them, too big, too honest. Claire stood. She was close now, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes, the small scar above her left eyebrow. "I applied here because I saw the job posting," she said. "I didn't know you worked here. I didn't know I'd see you. But when I walked into that room and you were sitting there—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "I don't know what I'm doing, Daniel." It was the first time she'd said his name, and it rewired something in his chest. "You're interviewing for a job," he said. "I'm not qualified. I have an associate's degree and 3 years of waitressing. They're going to laugh me out of the building." "They won't." "How do you know?" "Because I'm on the hiring committee," Daniel said. "And I'm not going to let them—" She stared at him. "You can't do that. Watch me." "Daniel, you're smart," he said. "You're sharper than half the people in that office. You see things. You notice things. That matters more than a degree." "You don't even know me," Claire said, but her voice wavered. "I know you show up early and stay late," Daniel said. "I know you don't cut corners. I know you care about doing things right, even when no one's watching. That's who you are, Claire. That's who you've always been." Her eyes shone. She blinked quickly, looking away. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you quit a job you hated to take a chance on something better," Daniel said. "And because for 6 months you were the only good part of my day?" The silence stretched. Down the hall, someone laughed. A phone rang. "What if I mess this up?" Claire asked. "Then you mess it up," Daniel said. "But you won't." She met his gaze, searching for something. Whatever she found must have been enough, because she nodded. "Okay." "Okay." The interview lasted 30 minutes. Daniel sat at the far end of the table, forcing himself to stay quiet while Jenkins and 2 other managers asked their questions. Claire answered with a steadiness that surprised even him. She didn't try to oversell herself. She was honest about her gaps, but she talked about what she had learned at Mabel's, how to manage chaos, how to read people, how to stay calm when everything was falling apart. When Jenkins asked why she wanted the job, she didn't give some rehearsed answer about career growth. She just said, "I'm tired of being underestimated." Daniel saw Jenkins write something down. He couldn't read it from where he sat, but the fact that he wrote anything was a good sign. When it was over, Claire shook hands with everyone and walked out. Daniel waited until the door closed before he spoke. "She's good," he said. Jenkins raised an eyebrow. "You know her?" It wasn't a question. Daniel kept his face neutral. "She was a regular at a cafe I went to. We didn't talk much." "She's underqualified," one of the other managers said. "On paper," Daniel said. "But we've hired Ivy League grads who couldn't write a coherent email. She's got something they don't. Which is grit." Jenkins leaned back in his chair, studying Daniel. "You're vouching for her." "I am." "Why?" "Because I think she'll be great at this," Daniel said. "And because we need people who actually want to be here, not just people checking boxes on a resume." Jenkins was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "We'll discuss it." That was all Daniel could ask for. He didn't see Claire again that day. He didn't see her the next day either. But on Friday afternoon, Jenkins stopped by his desk. "We're offering her the position," he said. "Junior analyst? She starts Monday." Daniel looked up, heart pounding. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Jenkins gave him a look. "Don't make me regret this, Corrigan." "You won't." Monday morning, Daniel arrived at 7:30. The office was still quiet, most desks empty. He made coffee in the break room, terrible as always, and carried it back to his desk. At 8, the elevator chimed, and Claire stepped out. She wore the same gray blazer, but she looked different, nervous, excited. She scanned the room, and when she saw him, her face softened. Daniel stood. Hey! First day. Yeah. They stood there, awkward and uncertain, until Claire laughed, a small, breathy sound. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. You don't have to say anything, Daniel said. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. You would, he said. Maybe not here specifically, but somewhere. You didn't need me, Claire. You just needed the chance. She stepped closer. Thank you. You're welcome. I mean it, she said. I know you put your neck out for me. I'm not going to let you down. I know. The silence settled again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of all the things they hadn't said yet, all the things they would say eventually. Can I buy you coffee sometime? Daniel asked. Real coffee, not the sludge from the break room. Claire smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her in months. Are you asking me out, Corrigan? I think I am. You think? I am, he said, more certain. I'm asking you out. Then yes, Claire said. I'd like that. The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful and terrifying. Claire proved herself quickly, faster than Daniel expected. She absorbed everything, asked the right questions, stayed late, came in early. People noticed. Jenkins noticed. And Daniel noticed the way she looked at him across the conference table, the way her hand brushed his when they both reached for the same file, the way she laughed at his terrible jokes when no one else did. They didn't tell anyone. Not yet. It felt too fragile, too new. But there were stolen moments. Coffee runs that lasted too long. Late nights when everyone else had gone home and it was just the two of them in the empty office talking about everything and nothing. The night she told him about her father, about growing up in a house where dreams were luxuries they couldn't afford. The night he told her about the weight of expectations he could never meet. You don't have to be what he wants, Claire said. I don't know how to be anything else, Daniel admitted. You're already something else, she said. You just don't see it yet. And maybe she was right. Maybe he had spent so long trying to fit into a shape that wasn't his that he had forgotten what he actually looked like. But when he was with Claire, it didn't feel like work. It felt like breathing. 3 months in, they stopped pretending. Daniel kissed her in the parking garage after a late meeting, and she kissed him back, and that was that. They told Jenkins the next day. He sighed, made them sign some HR forms, and told them not to make it weird. They didn't. Or they tried not to. But it was impossible to ignore the way everything had shifted, the way the world felt different now that she was in it. On a cold night in December, they stood on the roof of his apartment building, the city spread out below them, lights glittering like scattered stars. Claire leaned against the railing, her breath misting in the air. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't walked into that interview? She asked. All the time, Daniel said. What do you think? I think I would have spent the rest of my life drinking bad coffee and wondering where you went. She turned to look at him. That's depressing. Yeah, I'm glad I took the chance, she said. Me too. I was terrified, you know. Walking into that building. I almost turned around 3 times. What stopped you? She smiled. I thought about you. About the way you looked at me in that cafe, like I was the only person in the room. I wanted to feel that again. Daniel reached for her hand. You do this to me, Claire. You make me feel like I can be more than what I thought I was. You already are, she said. You just needed someone to see it. They kissed, slow and certain, and the city hummed below them, indifferent and infinite. And Daniel thought about all the small choices that had led them here. The cafe. The coffee. The mornings he could have skipped. The interview she almost didn't go to. The universe had a strange way of bending, of pulling people together when they needed each other most. So here's the question. Have you ever let fear stop you from taking a chance on something or someone that could change everything? And if you could go back, would you do it differently? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if you enjoyed this one, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about love, second chances, and the courage it takes to rewrite your life. Thanks for watching.